Stick around after for our conversation with the host of the new podcast, You Didn't See Nothing, a powerful new limited series that follows host Johann Slakor as he revisits the 1997 hate crime on the south side of Chicago. Today on CityCast Chicago, it's not just the April 4th runoff happening. We're getting you caught up today on an important criminal justice bill, a trial that could rock Illinois politics, and a shakeup to Summertime Shy. It's Tuesday, March 14th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about.
Five, 4, 3, 2. Oh, whoops, I was one behind.
I'm joined today by lead producer Carrie Shepard and producer Simone Alisea. What's up, y'all? How y'all feeling this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we jump into some stories, Simone, can you make sure people are familiar with what's going off in our mayoral runoff, some key dates, some upcoming forums?
Yeah, I want to just let people know about a couple forums if they do want to hear from the candidates, Paul Vallis and Brandon Johnson. There's a public safety forum tonight at 5 at UIC that you can RSVP for. Brandon Johnson's also going to be at Talia Hall tomorrow evening with Block Club Chicago for a one-on-one chat. They're also planning to have a conversation with Vallis at a later date that is to be announced. For more dates, things to know about, where to find your polling place, signing up for mail-in ballots, all that kind of thing, check out our newsletter, Hey Chicago, at chicago.citycast.fm. Our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, has got you covered on anything and everything that you could possibly want to know about voting in this next round. But today we are going to talk about stuff that is not the mayoral election. Lots of other news happening in Chicago. Jacoby, today the Illinois Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments about the Safety Act. So catch us up. Remind us, what is the Safety Act?
The Illinois Safety Act has been in the news for the better part of 2 years since Governor Pritzker signed it into law. And it contains a lot of different criminal justice reforms, from body cams for police officers across Illinois to putting more money into the public defense system. But the huge crux of the law that people have been focused on is how it impacts sort of pretrial procedures, everything from cash bail to who can be held in jail without bail to how long. And so when cash bail was ended, it essentially said that judges will make the decision on how people are detained before trial. Then, of course, that was challenged by prosecutors, judges across Illinois, and now the Illinois Supreme Court will hear it. If you sort of break this down into two camps, on one side you have individuals who argue that this law is unconstitutional, that it sort of forces judges into a system that, they did not ask for, and that it will make Illinois a less safe place. Then you have individuals on the other side, led by Attorney General Kwame Raoul, who says, no, that's not what this does. In fact, it does not mean that people won't be held in jail. It simply means that judges will have to make those choices. Two, he says that it sort of takes away from what people have argued is, a system of economics, that if you can afford to not be in jail, you won't be there. And they argue that so much goes into this beyond simply keeping a person in jail or not, that if you are held in jail pre-trial for too long, you are likely to lose your job. It impacts your family situation. It impacts your home situation. And so now we will hear, where the Supreme Court falls on this, which, it should be noted is a majority Democrat-held Supreme Court. But about 4 of those people are new, so we don't really know how they will or won't side on this case.
Exactly. And worth noting that the lower court judge that, essentially ruled in the favor of folks who wanted to pause this was a Republican, is a Republican, I should say. As you mentioned, the Safety Act was passed in 2021, but this portion, the cashless bail element, was supposed to go into effect in January of this year, but because of the court proceedings, has been held up. And we don't yet know when the Supreme Court will rule on this. We're hearing oral arguments today, but it may yet be months before we actually know what the future of this law will be. Also happening in court today, Carrie, today's the first day of the ComEd 4 trial. Who are the ComEd 4?
The ComEd for Simone, this is Michael McLean. He was a former ComEd lobbyist, but maybe people are paying a little closer attention to him because he is a longtime confidant of former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan. Of course, Michael Madigan, long the most powerful politician in the state. There's also Anne Pramaggiore. She was a former CEO of ComEd. John Hooker was a VP and lobbyist, former VP at ComEd. Finally, Jay Doherty, also a lobbyist, but journalists and sort of politicos would know him because he used to run City Club Chicago. This is really being hailed as the most watched criminal political corruption trial in more than a decade. And I think we know what that last one was. That was former Governor Rod Blagojevich. This is kind of like the closest, that prosecutors, anti-corruption prosecutors have gotten to Madigan. We should be clear, he is not on trial here, but this is sort of seen as a preview for his trial because he has been indicted on separate charges for next year.
Can you just kind of explain, what is the central allegation of corruption here? What is it that the ComEd 4 are accused of doing in connection with former House Speaker Michael Madigan?
This is really about sort of ComEd, these lobbyists having this insider relationship with some ComEd executives to grease the wheels in Springfield to get to pass legislation that would be beneficial to ComEd, both their bottom line, but also in passing policies like the smart grid, right? The smart grid, was seen to be sort of a costly investment for the state, but this is something that ComEd wanted. And at longtime Springfield watchers know nothing in Springfield when Madigan was there, no legislation gets through without Madigan having a say on it, right? People are going to take the stand who benefited from this, who said, look, I got this job or I was getting paid X amount.
Prosecutors have 70 witnesses that they're planning to call.
70 witnesses, people who actually said, I was getting paid to do no work. So I was getting a monthly check from ComEd and I wasn't really doing any contract work for them or anything. But really, it's just kind of your classic standard. A lot of this stuff can be really weedy sometimes and can be really in the nitty gritty. But this is pretty standard old school patronage, which is you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So we need this passed. We need this legislation, this policy, this ordinance, whatever it may be. In exchange, we're going to give your guy a job here. We're going to give your guy a contract here. We're going to give your guy a permit here. And we should be clear, ComEd has admitted wrongdoing and paid $200 million already.
They admitted some wrongdoing. They paid the $200 million to drop the bribery charges. And so they said we did a little point of this. But honestly, when you get into those weeds, that's what makes me feel like, maybe some of these individuals, but also Mike Madigan might be in a position to walk because as he's argued throughout this process, he was like, well, this is what lobbyists do, work on behalf of, corporations. I've been getting people jobs for the longest. I mean, isn't that just networking? Isn't it just who you know? And he'd argue, I didn't force anyone to vote for any legislation. But I wonder if him and his attorneys are going to be able to paint this as just sort of run-of-the-mill political work, right, and sort of keep things moving. Because I imagine when you really describe some of the things that people are being alleged of, that this is happening a lot more than just with Mike and his four compadres.
Oh, of course. And it wasn't even that long ago that, aldermen would say, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? That why shouldn't I get people a job? Why shouldn't I help them? I'm a leader from the community. They elected me. Why shouldn't I help them? Type of thing. And, those lines get really blurry really fast.
And that said, I think the thing, while you describe this as sort of being a classic case, I think the other thing to keep in mind, though, is just the scale of what's going on here. ComEd, we all know who ComEd is. Their bills come into our mailboxes every month, right? And so I never want to lose sight of, this isn't just one job. This isn't just,
No,
one
for
person
sure.
in one district. We're talking about a major player in something that is that we all need and experience and have to use.
Our energy provider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the outcome of this trial and then Madigan's trial next year, I think there will be some messages sent, one way or the
Yeah.
other.
Change how the game of Illinois politics is played for sure.
Moving away from the courtroom, it has been so gray, so gray. And I have just been dreaming about Summertime Shy, but the usual lineup for events is changing up a little bit, especially downtown. Jacoby, why is downtown going to look a little different this summer?
Because Mayor Lori Lightfoot a few months ago granted NASCAR the ability to run a race in downtown Chicago the 4th of July weekend. But with any major event held downtown, that means that Grant Park and sort of the surrounding streets will be shut off for weeks to other events going on in that area. And like you said, with Summertime Shy, Grant Park is packed throughout the summer. We talking just average Chicagoans playing softball, but also huge events like the Taste of Chicago, which has been running since 1980. And reporters started looking at the Grant Park schedule for the summer, and they saw NASCAR, but they did not see the Taste. Initially, it looked like the Taste would be held closer to Navy Pier, but just yesterday afternoon, the city announced no, the Taste will be in Grant Park, but this year they're pushing it back to September 8th through the 10th with these smaller neighborhood Taste previews earlier in the summer in Marquette Park, Humboldt Park, and Pullman Park. And so every summer we have this these sort of dueling sides. On one side is Summertime Shy. There are so many things to do in so many neighborhoods. The loop is popping. But then on the other side, we're always arguing, well, at the cost of what? With all of these cool events in our streets, what are we losing? And then the loop, that is access to public parks, that's access to the streets, and that is some events that won't be there. I'm going to just sort of, I know a lot of people have been dumping on the NASCAR deal because I mean, when you think of NASCAR, Chicago might not be the first place, but the more and more homies I ask about this, people who I have never said anything about NASCAR before, they are in love with this idea.
Oh, that's interesting.
The idea that there will be racing in downtown Chicago, and no one in my friend circle is coming out for the Taste, because to us, the Taste, honestly, for some people was a little archaic. Maybe it was just old. That's not what's on their list of things to do. And
too expensive, standing around the heat next to a garbage can, eating food.
Last
it's messy.
year, its reemergence was sloppy.
Yeah.
You would just look on social media about long ass lines that people were not filling. And the pandemic forced people to reimagine the Taste, and they started this sort of Taste in different neighborhoods. And I went to a Taste out in Pullman. I went to one in Austin, and I enjoyed those more than I enjoyed going to the Taste in Grant Park. And so, again, let's be clear. A lot of the concern around the NASCAR deal was about transparency. Alder people, residents, just Chicagoans at large saying, where did this come from? Who asked for it? And who negotiated this deal? Because it doesn't look like we're getting the same type of money or returns that you might see on these other large scale deals. Moving forward, I think, the next mayor for sure is going to have to face a lot of scrutiny about how we negotiate these recreation deals, these business deals, these tourist attractions. But on the other hand, I do think it's sort of creating space for a conversation about, like, what do Chicagoans want their summertime to look like? How do they want their parks to be used, their streets to be used? And I don't think we have a sort of clear yay or nay when it comes to NASCAR. The question is going to keep coming back up because the deal allows for a few more races, not just the summer of 2023.
Carrie, what's your take on this? How are you feeling about the layout of downtown summer?
Yeah, I think Jacoby nailed it in that I do think the taste is one of those things you kind of feel like you have to experience once. And then like Jacoby said, the neighborhood idea that they were doing in recent years is great. It's like such a good idea that you can, explore your neighborhood more and everyone doesn't have to congregate downtown. Also, I should say Millennium Park, which is, that things have sort of changed for people going to Millennium Park too. Now it's like kind of gated off. You have to go through security, but like
if you're under 18, you can't go at certain
you can't
parts.
go. Yeah. And in summer, Millennium Park, the city would have great summertime. Every Thursday there'd be concerts and there would be dance lessons. And like I know for me, those were always amazing. And like to go after work, like we would gather people and be like, okay, hey, I grabbed a blanket, I grabbed a bottle of wine, let's go like throw down a blanket at Millennium Park and watch a concert, which I'm hoping those kind of things are still able to happen, because the other thing is they're free. That's how it should be. It's the parks. It's our parks. We shouldn't be paying to get into our parks.
Always love to end on some good news here at CityCast Chicago. So, Jacoby, what's the good news you've got for the people today?
I wish this was an event they could participate in, but it has passed. But I wanted to give some more love to our good friend Natalie Moore, whose play The Billboard had a one-night-only theatrical presentation last night at the Green Line Performing Arts Center. I did get to go be in the building to support the homie. And, another fantastic showing from the cast. Hopefully it will come back in some more iterations. I remember talking with Natalie, and she was hoping for, more runs of the play over 2023. So hopefully it'll come back and more people get an opportunity to see it. It's a fantastic play. But if you haven't seen it, you can pick up the book, and we'll drop a link where you can find that. So shout out to Natalie Moore and the entire cast of The Billboard.
Love it. Love it. Always love it when our friends get to see some more love, more success. Carrie, what's your good news?
I just in the neighborhood seen the bear, which actually, it's Sheldrake is what the decoy signs are calling. I've been seeing the bear. I saw him this morning. I haven't actually seen the actors, but I've seen the filming around the neighborhood and stuff. And we all liked the bear and we all liked seeing our city. And I love that. I love that there's just something kind of proud when you're like, hey, that's my coffee shop. That's where we get takeout. And that's, whatever it is, to spot those things and to give love to our city. And I may be putting this out into the universe. We're working on locking in the creator of the bear for an interview with Jacoby. That will be happening. So I'm putting that out there too. So I know the bear's been around for a couple manifesting. I know it's been around for a couple weeks, but the trailer dropped and it looks fun and exciting and yeah.
And if anybody does see any of the actors, you see Carm or Sydney, maybe let us know. Tweet at us. I'd love to hear about it. Jacoby, Carrie, thank you guys so much for breaking down the news today.
Thanks, Simone. So fun.
For sure.
Hi, I'm Carrie Shepard, lead producer of CityCast Chicago. In the many years of being a journalist in this city, I've heard and told all kinds of stories about people who work to make Chicago better, policies that help some but not all, and of course, the ugly stories that make us feel angry, hurt, and ashamed. But I'd never heard the story of Leonard Clark. Until I binged the new podcast, You Didn't See Nothing, from USG Audio and the Invisible Institute. In 1997, Leonard Clark was a 13-year-old black boy who was beaten into a coma by a gang of white teens. Johannes LaCour hosts You Didn't See Nothing, and he's here to tell you why you have to listen immediately to this podcast like I did recently. Hi, Johannes.
Hey, Carrie. How you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for doing this. It's so nice to meet you and to listen to this podcast that is just incredible. But let's start with the story of Leonard Clark. We're coming up to the 26th anniversary of this terrible event, March 21st, 1997. Johannes, what happened to Leonard Clark on that day?
That day, Leonard Clark traveled across an imaginary line in Chicago that separated the all-black projects and Stateway Gardens he was from the all-white, historically racist neighborhood of Bridgeport. His bike tire had a flat. And so he was looking for air in the neighborhood of Bridgeport, which was across the expressway by design. Think sundown town. When he got there, he was beaten into a coma by a gang of white young men. And that changed the course of his life.
How was the media in Chicago and nationally covering this story?
In the immediate hours and days after, they covered it responsibly. But shortly after that, the media coverage became about racial reconciliation, healing, and forgiveness. And that was prompted more by the people. So many Black so-called activists and leaders started to have a change of heart for reasons that the podcast dives into. And that journalism then became very sloppy, irresponsible. I didn't discover how poorly it was being covered until I started covering it myself.
How did you start your career in investigative journalism around this time?
Well, after I heard about what happened, I had wanted to do something about it. I had been a writer since I was a youngster. My father knew about a small local newspaper that was also based in the projects and said, maybe you should try writing about it. I did that. I met a guy named Ron Carter at the South Street Journal who had an amazing network all throughout the South Side. He was able to put me on the ground with people who knew Leonard and his family personally. And that just opened it all up to me. And that just changed my life.
25 years later, what is the story You Didn't See Nothing trying to tell about Leonard Clark now?
The You Didn't See Nothing isn't about Leonard Clark, the person right now, as much as it is about the fact that most Black folks are Leonard Clark. Most Black folks have been abused and injured by, the white supremacist dynamics of this country in a way that has not been told. And so it's really about the fact that there's still a lot of repair that is due. And in addition to repairing what's been damaged, which is, the bodies and souls and minds of Black folks, it's also about repairing a system so that we can prevent it. I feel like that's a lot of what we're hoping to get across in terms of the story of Leonard Clark, how relevant it still is today.
You say the podcast is part investigation, part memoir. While doing You Didn't See Nothing, what did you learn about yourself, Johannes?
Wow, how much time we got. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about my own virtues and flaws. I learned a lot about how I look at the world, and I learned a lot about why this particular story has stayed with me so much, and why my passion for Black folks and justice and my need to root for the underdog has been so strong throughout my life. But it's been a hell of a journey that's included a lot of soul searching.
The story of Leonard Clark and what was happening in Chicago at the time is such a compelling, amazing story. And Johannes, you are really the perfect guide for it.
Thank you.
Johannes LaCour is host of the podcast You Didn't See Nothing. It's produced by USG Audio and the Invisible Institute, the producers of the 2020 Pulitzer finalist podcast, Somebody. You can binge all 7 episodes, like I did, of You Didn't See Nothing now wherever you get your podcasts.
Before I let you go, one more reminder to subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, at chicago.citycast.fm. And if you love the podcast as much as we do, remember to leave a rating and review wherever you listen. I'll be back tomorrow. Talk to you then. Peace.
Good. Now I'll get my countdown right.
That's the important thing here.